So it's an absolute delight to be here with you all today. We are very excited to visit with you, to talk to you a little bit about what we do. We have a pretty jam-packed schedule, so we're going to do a quick introduction, and then we're going to look at specifically some openings that we have in mission engineering. We hear that a lot of you are folks with engineering background, so we definitely want to communicate that to you. And then we're going to talk to you about our internship program, what that means, what that looks like, and to ensure that you're putting your best foot forward when it pertains to full-time positions or internship positions. We're going to cover some do's and don'ts, some tips, best practices when it comes to resume building and interviewing. And then we'll have 10 minutes of Q&A, and I hope that by then you'll have tons of really good questions for us. So with that, I'm Dr. Suleima Karuba Rogel, super long name, please call me Suleima. As in zoo, let's go to the zoo, lay as in lay down, and ma as in that's my mom. Pretty simple, right? So to get us started, who are we, what do we do? At Pantex, we are extremely mission driven. The work that we do is critical to our nation's safety. And it is a mission that each and every one of us takes extremely seriously. We have ample goals as part of our mission, which include providing that nuclear deterrent, ensuring the stockpile, that it is strong and viable, and overall reducing the total nuclear weapons in our stockpile. As you can imagine, there is a life expectancy on some of these weapons that need to be retired. So we transition into that. What does it mean to appropriately retire a weapon? And of course, one of our other pieces that we do, and especially at Pantex, which is our High Explosive Center of Excellence. So overall, our goal and our mission is to ensure that we are meeting each and every one of these. And as noted, we are extremely mission oriented. It's in all the verbiage that we use every day, because we have to have a very clear objective for what we do, and our mission has to be met. Our nation depends on it. So we are part of a bigger nuclear security enterprise. And as you see here, there are production facilities, design laboratories, experiment sites, and they are across the nation. One of the fascinating parts about this at Pantex especially is that you're going to see on this slide here that all roads lead to Pantex. Everybody, anything that they do and provide has to come at one point here at Pantex before it can go out or as it's being created. So think about your site at WT. Y'all are pretty big. I think y'all have about maybe 12,000 students, if I recall. Y'all are a pretty good sized school. And I've been on your campus, and it can take a minute to walk to and from a building. Pantex, you definitely cannot walk your way across the site. We are really, really big. We sit on many, many acres, and the buildings themselves, what the operations that we have, sit on 2,000 acres. So definitely drive around. I see some folks on bikes, but I don't know how well that works for them. So we're definitely a pretty big site when you take the scope of a university and then look at what we do and what we are. We're pretty much a small city. And with that, I would love to turn this over to Courtney, where she's going to walk over with you some of our positions in engineering. Courtney.
Hello, everybody. I'm not sure if you can see me. That doesn't really matter, but can you hear me well?
Yes.
Yes, you're good.
Okay, good deal. My name is Courtney Waddell. I am a WT grad myself. I've been at Pantex for 7 years. I am currently a mechanical engineering manager in facility engineering, which is part of mission engineering, which we're going to talk about. Mission engineering is a big group of engineers. If you'll go back one slide, I want to talk a little bit about what this group does. So everyone you see here, every engineering department is supporting exactly what we were talking about, the main mission, which is very much centered around the high explosives side of the business and the nuclear weapons side of the business. I've been a facility engineering manager for about a year, but prior to that, I was an individual contributor in facility engineering. I was hired about a year and a half before I graduated out of WT. I've really enjoyed my experience at Pantex, and I'm happy to be here telling y'all a little bit more about what we do. So some of these departments are facility engineering, process engineering, tooling and tester engineering, safety analysis, engineering assurance, projects engineering, research and development, and systems engineering. So if we go to the next slide, I'm going to talk about the one that's kind of near and dear to my heart, which is facility engineering. We are split up by discipline in facility engineering. So we have an electrical group. They take care of the electrical distribution at our plant. As we said, it is a big plant. We have 2 substations, and these engineers are taking care of all the switching orders, ensuring that our electrical distribution will be around for a lifetime, and maintaining what we've got. Electromagnetic group, that's more engineering and physics related. They do a lot of our lightning detection out of the plant. That we have certain operations that we cannot perform when there's lightning in the area. You wouldn't think we have as much lightning as we do, but it is a big deal, and there are safety measures in place for when we're under lightning warning. So they're constantly evolving in that group and seeing how we can detect lightning sooner and know exactly where and when it's going to strike. The mechanical section is actually the section I've worked in for most of my time at Pantex. They have process equipment, which is special equipment used to test nuclear weapons. This could be x-rays that they're using to do surveillance work, mass properties machines, which is a machine where we put a weapon on and check the mass properties. That can tell us about the flight performance of a weapon. That's something that is done right before units leave our site when we're done with them. And then other things, we have a vacuum chamber. We control the compressed gas. There's a lot of equipment in that group. Balance of plant is more of your everything else. So as mechanical engineering majors, you're usually a little more broad, and they take care of all of our utilities. So that is like HVAC, dehumidification, some more of the water side. So domestic water, irrigation, you name it. If it's not process equipment and a mechanical engineer is not taking care of it, the balance of plant folks do. HECM, that is a new effort in my group. They are taking some of our older HE facilities and putting all of the building information into configuration management. Configuration management is a way that we control our drawing sets and all the information on our system, so we have a good snapshot in time of what's out in the field. For civil and structural, it's just like it sounds. They're taking care of the buildings. We are facility engineering, so when we say that, we mean everything from the facility to the equipment in it. And then fire protection is a big deal at our site. A fire is one of our biggest hazards when working with nuclear weapons. So this is a fairly big group. I know y'all just signed for a new program at WT. That's very exciting to take some fire protection classes. We're always needing fire protection engineers. These systems are spread out across the plant, so they have a very big job to do. So at the end, just kind of our back on the facility engineering. Can you back up one more? So I said a lot about what we're doing, but the main point is to be the technical authority of who defines the important to safety attributes of critical systems at Pantex. So a lot of the things that I mentioned has safety attributes related to our systems, and we have to ensure that those are in place. So you become an expert per se of your system, and you have to be ready and willing to talk about it at any time and prove how you are ensuring your safety features. So here, I'll run through this really quick. We are supposed to be monitoring our systems. We like to say that we own them cradle to grave. That means when your system is out of commission, you're in charge of doing a replacement. This could be a small system or a large system. We've got multi-million-dollar equipment out there that we are replacing all the time. We're getting a lot of infrastructure money right now. So our group has almost doubled in size as we try to maintain what we got and replace some of the aging equipment. So I'm not going to read this list off to you of things that we take care of, but there is a laundry list. So Our facility engineering is about 80 engineers. We're looking at staffing up to about 100 over the next couple years. So there's a lot of opportunity in this group if you're interested. Okay, I'm ready for the next slide. If Mark's on, I'm going to let him talk about process engineering.
Yeah, can you guys hear me at all? Hello?
Yes.
You're good, Mark.
All right, thank you. All right, so I'm a process engineering section manager. I've been in process for about 6 years. I've managed this group for working on a year and a half. So as the slide says, the process engineering department develops weapon and assembly and disassembly process and procedures. What that means is that we design the process and procedures to any weapon or product that we build here at Pantex that involves nuclear weapons. What you see on the screen there is actually a joint test assembly. So we assemble all of our surveillance stuff. We do a lot of work when it comes to the policies and processes to assembling and disassembling nuclear weapons. Just want to go to the next slide. So we do weapon process development. We get involved really early in a project. So right whenever a new project, whether it be assembly or disassembly, is announced, we assign a process engineer. They get involved early, help the design agencies design the product, kind of put our input from a producibility standpoint. We represent the Pantex production agency as the technical point of contact. Now, what that means is that just like all roads lead to Pantex, we like to say that all roads lead to process. We integrate with federal program managers, design agencies. We're hand in hand with the technicians. At the other end, we talk to and we have to integrate almost daily with our program managers, other engineering organizations and other safety organizations. And so people come to us as the owner of this product. And so there's a fun fact there. The data gathered from the disassembly and inspection activities is used to certify the reliability of the United States nuclear arsenal to the president. And that's true. All of the data that we gather here at Pantex that process engineering drives is used to certify the stockpile every single year to the president of the United States. And we actually have a hand in verifying and supporting that report that goes to the president. It's a really big responsibility, and process engineering has a great responsibility when it comes to certifying and keeping up with our nuclear stockpile. Every weapon in the U.S. arsenal is built at the Pantex plant and will someday be disassembled at the Pantex plant. Even more than that, every weapon in the U.S. arsenal had a process engineer involved, and that's super cool. I like to tell all of our new folks that while we have a lot of entities that are in and around our processes, we rely on them to do our jobs. At the end of the day, we are the ones that get those weapons built. And yeah, like that says, every weapons operation in Pantex is directed by our procedures and our processes that we develop. Now, we couldn't do our job without tooling and tester design. So I'll get the next two if you want to go on to the next one. So we definitely couldn't do our job without tooling and tester engineering. They're responsible for the design of special tooling, electrical and mechanical equipment, and evaluation, and we use those tools to do our job, to do our processes in building and disassembling the weapons here. And so every bit of machinery you see here on the screen was developed, designed by tooling and tester design. They integrate with process engineering, they integrate with safety analysis engineering, facility engineering, to design those tools to very tight tolerances to do a very specific job. And they're critical to the successes here at the Pantex plant. I'm going to jump on to the next one. So tooling and tester engineering, they design special tooling, they prototype. So it's really cool what they do. They'll receive either a model or a mock-up or something of a product, and then they have to build a tool using the just kind of conceptual processes that the process engineer provides them to come up with a design, and then they prototype that design either by 3D printing or ordering a prototype from one of the shops, and then they take that and they try it out. And so they're integrated into how that tool is used. They take it to the training bay. They use those tools to see how it works. They support fabrication. They do mechanical, thermal, impact, safety analysis, weight bearing analysis. They have to implement a whole bunch of safety controls and a factor of safety into those tools. They're very difficult job when it comes to designing tooling. And they're there to provide support. Something breaks, they have to go down, figure out, is it usable, is it fixable? How do we do this in a safe manner within the bounds of our processes? So I think Courtney and I both mentioned safety and analysis engineering. Safety and analysis engineering is responsible for what we call the DSA, the documented safety analysis. This is the document, or I guess the collection of documents that maintain our authorization for performing nuclear explosive, high explosive operations. And so what they do is they take all of the safety controls and they take all of the hazards in a process, and they develop controls to mitigate those hazards. And so they are involved with everyone because they flow those controls to everybody. All of our documents go through safety analysis engineering. They kind of sign off on everything that we do to ensure that we perform our job at the highest safety possible with the highest success possible. And then project engineering. Project engineering provides engineering support for infrastructure, maintenance, modifications, new facilities, LEPs. They provide support for project schedules. They're a very interesting group of engineers. They kind of integrate with all of these different teams, almost like a project manager, but more engineering focus. And they operate at a high level, and kind of our face in those early days to a lot of those projects. They're responsible for some of our visions when it comes to new facilities, facility modifications, infrastructures, and like I said, new projects as far as weapon assembly and disassembly projects. They usually come with a wealth of experience, and they bring that to the table with the design agencies and federal program managers that are responsible for providing us that funding for that work. And finally, the R&D department, research and development engineering, they manage metallurgical processes, surveillance, special material, focused experience, and additive manufacturing. And really what they do is they go out and they are responsible for helping Pantex evolve, right? To push into more technologies, newer technologies, better technologies. They're responsible for doing these experiments to help us do our job more efficiently and better. And they really are kind of an autonomous group that take on these projects with the funding that is involved with it, and take that to fruition. They come up with ideas, they have a use case, they do an experiment, do some targeted trials, and then they see it to actual production. So that's that group. And I think, Courtney, you were going to cover systems engineering.
Yes, okay. System engineering is new to Pantex. I think our sister site Y12 has been doing this for a while, but several years back, probably about 5 years ago, the company decided to offer for you to go back to school to get a system engineering degree as a master's if you wanted to. And they have formed this group out of that program when they were doing it. But ultimately, system engineers are the heart of creating new systems. They're at the forefront. They are compiling documents and requirements and ensuring that as we go out and do a lot of these major projects, that we have all the correct information. So they interface with a lot of the different groups that we've talked about today. They're looking at the design of the systems. Is this the most efficient way? Is there something we can do better the second time around? And making sure that those documents are flowed down to us as we go out and start to replace equipment. There's a lot to this that I probably don't even know about, but I know they're very integrated in with the technology that we're going to be using, coming up with new ideas, and then launching,
think she might have disconnected on accident.
She did leave the meeting.
Thanks, Tim.
Mark, do you want to continue?
Sure, we can kind of pick up where she left off. She's exactly right. Systems engineering is actually, that may actually be her jumping back on, but they are a relatively new group. They are kind of gaining more engineers as they go. They kind of integrate with everybody and really help us characterize our systems and support those. They're definitely integrated with our large machinery, our large equipment, that facility engineering equipment that she was talking about earlier. I know that our process engineers integrate with the systems folks quite often when it comes to upkeep and maintenance and coordinating that in with the systems engineering group.
So needless to say, wow, we have a very, very big engineering department for both Y12 and Pantex. And engineering is a solid piece of what we do and what it takes for us to do the work that we do. We also have positions in supply chain management and ESMH and in information sciences and cybersecurity. We have such a grand scope, HR, communications, legal, audit, etc., that it takes for us to do the work that we do to reach our mission. Engineering, mission engineering definitely has a grand scope of that. So for the folks in this room that are on that pathway, we definitely encourage you to look at what we do and the openings that we might have. And as Courtney had mentioned, we're definitely growing. So please stay tuned to those opportunities. Please put yourself out there. And one of the ways to do that as a current student is to look at our internship program. So as it pertains to this, we have various disciplines that we're hiring for our interns. And you'll see those mentioned here and some that I have just shared. In order for you to be eligible to join our amazing internship program, you must be at least a junior in standing or a graduate student, but no more than 2 years post-grad. So if you have some friends out there that graduated last year and they're kind of trying to figure out what they want to do, send this their way. Let them know that this is an opportunity for them to apply to. You do need to have a minimum of a 3.0 GPA, security clearance for the work that we do, being very sensitive and critical to our nation. There is a condition of employment which requires US citizenship. So it is one thing to keep in mind. In pre-employment screening, you can always be pulled up for a random drug test or alcohol screening, and those are all conditions and required of our positions. To give you some idea of what our internships look like, they run over the summer, typically start in June. They run about 10 weeks. And our internship program, they're very project driven. So in order for a hiring manager to take on an intern, they have a project or projects that they're proposing for them to accomplish. So you're definitely going to get a lot out of that experience. You're not going to be at the copy machine all day, every day. You're going to be working. You're going to be applying knowledge and gaining new knowledge. You also have a mentor. So this is a colleague. This is a person in your field that has been there some time, that has a good scope of how things work. And they're there to grow you professionally and ensure that you're having a great experience. So we also do professional development. There's a lot of pieces that come into what you, and for you to really emerge as that young professional that we want to make sure that we foster and grow. But yes, these are 10 to 12 weeks over the summer and very meaningful learning environments. In order to apply, you have our link here. You can also just Google jobs at Pantex, and when it comes up, you'll put in internship and it's going to pull up the different pools that we have. Make sure as a recruiter, and we have Dan on here with me, as a recruiter, make sure that your resume includes your class standing. So if you're a junior, senior, etc., in that it includes your GPA. If that is not on your resume, your application is considered incomplete and you won't be considered. So please make sure that you don't take an opportunity away from yourself by not having that on your actual resume. We do have very competitive salaries for our intern positions, as well as, of course, our full-time positions. So not only do we want it to be rewarding for you, but we also want to make sure that we take care of you. So definitely excited to see applicants coming from this group, both for our internship, our full-time positions, and especially our engineering openings that were covered by Courtney and Mark. So as you're thinking about, okay, I want to submit, I want to work here, I love what you're about, I support the mission, how do I become a part of this team? It's no secret that it can be a little hard to get on board. And I know that it took me a year. It can be a little hard to come on board. And there are some things I want to go over with you as to what it means to build a strong resume. This is your first interview, your resume. And let's cover some of these pieces as to what it means to really put your best foot forward. So some tips. Format, I've seen so many layouts, all of these fancy things, some with pictures, some without. I haven't met a recruiter, and Dan, you're on here, you can tell me otherwise, that's very picky about the layout of a resume, or even a hiring manager that's picky with the layout of the resume. Just don't overthink it, find something that you like, that you feel conveys your message, and be consistent. Some things to think about is tense. The tense that you're using in it should be past tense. For a current position, if I have a current position, I use present tense. But whatever you do, just be consistent. Like if we're going through and you're switching between past and current tense in the positions that you're talking about, you don't want to distract the recruiter, you don't want to distract the hiring manager with inconsistencies like that. Let us focus on your awesomeness. Let us focus on your greatness. So be mindful of that. I would also encourage you to make a best friend out of a thesaurus. You want to really look at those action or power verbs that they're called when you're building your resume. I had an individual that on his resume, her resume, they used responsible for, and then that exact same sentence over and over and over again for the entire resume. And that doesn't have action verbs. You use the same entry into everything that you did. So what about led? What about championed? What about built? What about created? What about etc.? There's more ways to say what you've done and what you're capable of instead of just saying responsible for, right? So really look at that. Think about what's speaking to the work that I've done, and use those in your resume. I would use fonts in the style. If you're doing italics, I would use that very creatively to really highlight pieces that you want the recruiter or the hiring manager to look at when they see your resume. So I would use that. I wouldn't put it in every sentence because then it takes the luster away, but I would do that to strategically highlight something that you want to make sure their eyes are gravitated towards. Certainly encourage you to do a grammar check. You don't want anybody to be distracted by misspellings or etc. Like the focus needs to be on your greatness, right? Your awesomeness. Don't distract us with like, oh, you misspelled that word, spell check, right? So I would really encourage you to have a second pair of eyes look at that. Another thing to go into is you don't have to put everything down. You don't want it to be so busy, so exhaustive that your awesomeness gets lost. So definitely pick your points. You don't have to put absolutely everything that you've ever done, every award you won, every job you've ever had. Be mindful of that, and put what's really going to help you stand out for that position. For an undergrad, I'd say 1 to 2 pages is a good length. And I don't know, Courtney and Mark, if y'all have like a different experience with that, but typically that's what you want to range for. If you're more senior in your position, Those tend to be a bit longer, but I would say 1 to 2 pages would be something to shoot for. As you are, one of the things, and one of my colleagues brought this up as well, when a recruiter, for example, looks at a resume, they have one top decision that they have to make. Is this candidate qualified for this position or not? And qualifications are often tied to the minimum requirements in a job post. And those minimum requirements are education and years of relevant experience. So when we look at a resume, the first thing that we want to answer is, are you or are you not qualified to apply for that position? And if we have to sort through and look for your education, that's not a good thing. I would put that front and center, right above, right below my name. I would start off with my level of education. And another thing to be very clear of is if you're currently in that, acquiring that in progress, or if you've received it as well. There's been some inconsistencies that I've seen where folks are putting dates, but they didn't complete the education. They didn't complete that degree. So they put the start date and that was it. So when a recruiter or an individual reads this, they're thinking that means completion date, because dates go on there when it's completed. So if it's in progress, I would put that in there. I would put your start date and then in progress, and then your expected graduation date. Because as Courtney had mentioned, we have a lot of openings coming up that we're trying to hire for. So if we're looking at somebody to start such, if you're in progress to complete, we can very much look at you because you're expected to graduate this December or in May. So make sure that you're putting that in there, that it's absolutely clear where you're at in your studies. So definitely front and center. One of the things I definitely want to talk to you about is the structure in which you put things in. As a student, you, and this is me coming from the world of education, one of the biggest mistakes that a undergraduate, that a college student makes is thinking that they're in college to get a degree. You're in college to prepare yourself for a career. Not so the degree, you definitely want that and you want to do that well, but you want to prepare yourself for a career. And the way that you do that is by showing the application of knowledge. So when we're looking at what you've done, at your experience, really highlight what have you done to show the application of knowledge. What have you involved yourself in? What orgs have you worked with? What have you led? What projects were you a part of? What software program have you gained experience in? What have you done? What are you doing to show the application of knowledge, the mastery of knowledge? Because that's what's really telling and what really makes a candidate stand out. And when these recruiters and these hiring managers are looking at a resume, they're looking for what have you done to show that application. So I would really encourage you to highlight that in your resume. If you're not currently doing that, please make sure that you do. So if that means that you're, bugging your professor so that you can join their research lab, bug them. If that means that you dedicate a couple hours on the weekends to figure out how to use Tableau or some other software program that is very important in engineering or whatever field you want to go into, do that. Even if you're self-teaching yourself, or if you're taking some online curriculum or certificate to supplement the education that you're getting to really show the application of knowledge. If that means you're volunteering, if that, whatever it means that you're doing, I would encourage yourself to ask, how would I show an employer beyond the acquisition of my degree? How do I show them that I am applying the knowledge that I've gained? That I'm not just in a class. How do I show them that I'm applying this knowledge? And if I'm you, I put that first. So I get it. Like I was in college, I had to work a lot. And not all of my jobs were fancy jobs or in the field of education. You know, I waitressed for many years and I did work that wasn't specifically related to what I was going to school for. But my advice to you is when you're building your resume, put up front if maybe it was a project that you were a part of. I would start with that. I would do my projects, engineering projects, and then build into what you've done. And then I would go with job experience if my job experience maybe isn't as impactful for that job as my research and project experience is. So play with that and really make sure that what you want us to see, what would sell us on you, is front and centered and at the top down. Um, with your positions, we would encourage you to put dates. You do need to put your month, ideally your month and your year, because when compensation comes in and is looking at making an offer, they're going to look at your relevant experience and how much of it you have. So if you put, 2018 to 2020, that doesn't tell me if it's 2 years, if it's a year and a half, like when did you start exactly? When did you end exactly? So I would put month, year to range your position so that that is clear as to when you started and ended a position and they can make those determinations. But another thing I would say, keep that LinkedIn current. And I'm totally horrible about it. I was supposed to update mine before I did this info session, because if you look me up, it still has my previous job. So definitely terrible about it, but please don't follow my example, follow my advice. The reason why I'm mentioning to keep your LinkedIn updated is because employers, and not just us, but certainly us, we are very much looking at LinkedIn to bring in talent. And folks are using this platform to send out interview invites to let candidates know of positions that are open. So it is in your best interest to keep this updated, because that's how people are going to find you. So definitely keep that as a tool. So we talked about resume building, some do's and don'ts. Let's look at the interviewing process. So you submitted your resume, you had somebody looked at it, you feel good about it, you get the call that you're going to be scheduled for an interview. That's a big, big deal, very big deal, because that means that you intrigued that hiring manager, you intrigued them enough to where they're like, okay, let's see what you got. Let's see if you're really a good fit here. Let's figure this out, right? When you interview with us, your interview is broken down into two ways. The first part of your interview is what we called a behavioral interview. And this is where we're going to ask you questions that we're trying to figure out who you are, like how you handle things, not so much your technical knowledge, but you as a person. And so, for example, a question might be, give an example of a time when you use good judgment and logic in solving a problem. Or describe a time when you anticipated potential problems and developed preventative measures. My advice to you, use the STAR method. So you would describe the situation, you would show the task that you took on, the action that you created, and then the results that came from that. And when I interviewed at Pantex, my first interviewed, I bombed this part, totally, completely, absolutely bombed it, because I didn't know about the STAR method. I wasn't prepared in this way. And instead of giving one example, I gave them like 5 examples. It was bad. And Dan, I think you were part of the interviewing team. I'm so embarrassed. It was horrible. It's horrible. But so my advice to you, be ready. And we'll put this here. You definitely have to be prepared. When they gave me the second opportunity to interview, I was ready. I literally practiced over 140 STAR behavioral star style questions, over 140. There was nothing that they could ask me when I interviewed that I wasn't ready to answer. And for every single one of those questions that I practiced, I already had my scenario ready to go. I was ready to tell you the situation. I was ready to tell you the task. I was ready to tell you how I responded. I was ready to tell you how I solved it, what came out of that. Like I was ready to go. And so I definitely came out a lot more confident because I knew what I knew what they were expecting. And I wasn't coming into a chess game strategizing for Chinese checkers. I learned my lesson. So my advice to you, be prepared. Make sure that you practice answering these questions, that you are comfortable being succinct, and when you're out there that you give them one example. If they have follow-up questions, they'll ask you, but make sure that you're coming in and that you're prepared. It's really going to help with those nerves. I would encourage you to be sure that you're dressed for success. Even if it's a virtual platform, it doesn't matter. You want to be in that present moment, dressed for that opportunity. So you definitely don't want people to question that, right? And mind you, they'll look at everything. They're gonna look at, your hair, they're gonna look at your nails, they're looking at you and the way that you present yourself in a very, very important, space, which is interviewing. So definitely dress for success. Um, so because of, we're in a pandemic, definitely in a pandemic, we have a lot of these interviews are taking place on this format. They're online, right? Be very mindful of your environment. You don't want to interview for this on your bathroom toilet. You want it to be as professional as it can be. You want to make sure your internet is reliable. You want to make sure, your dog or brothers, sisters, kids, etc., aren't like swooping in the middle of your interview. You definitely want to show that your focus is on them and that they're focused to keep it on you. So just keep in mind of that setting and be prepared. There's almost always going to be some type of technical issue. Be prepared for that. The second time that I interviewed, I think it was my boss who's actually having login issues, and it was very awkward because I'm there with the other people that are going to interview me, and it was like crickets. So I had to fill in that noise. So make sure that if there's going to be some tech issues, that you're prepared. Have something to talk about, to kind of wait for people to be able to come in, so it's not too awkward and you're not losing your cool. We talked about being prepared. I would say, and this is something that I do a lot when I present or whatever I do, but I try to influence the tempo of that meeting. So for example, if I am very nervous, if I'm saying but a lot, if I'm not feeling like I'm answering things well, I will pause it and I will say something along the lines of, forgive me if I'm stumbling with my thoughts. I'm very nervous right now because this is such an extremely important opportunity for me. I recognize the work that you do. I'm fully in your mission, and I'm so excited to have the opportunity to be here. And I apologize if my nerves are getting the best of me. Like, I hope that doesn't hinder or come off as I hope it doesn't diminish how passionate I am about this and how grateful I am for this opportunity. So then just kind of pause it, control the tempo, let them say, oh, it's not that she doesn't know how to answer this, or, oh, it's not that she's not, fully prepared. She's just really passionate and a little nervous. Let them feed them what they need to be thinking in that scenario. So my advice to you, I would also, we talked earlier, be succinct, but very much be yourself and be honest, be authentic. Let them, if you leave that interview and they can't figure out who or what you're about, that's not good. You want them to be able to walk away and have an inclination as to who you are. So if you're very guarded, if you're, very stoic, they might not feel like they understand how you would fit in that culture. So make sure that you're authentic, that you're honest, and most of all, that you're being yourself. I would make sure that I have some solid questions for them before I conclude. And you don't want it just to be one directional where they're asking you, asking you, asking you. You want to also show that you have something that you've looked into that you're curious about. My favorite question when I walk away from an interview, I will ask them, is there anything, both in my resume or as we've carried out this interview, is there anything that you are uncertain about my ability to excel in this position that I have not clarified for you? So that's what I want to know. I want to know after all of this is said and done, is there still something that you're like, I'm not sure if she can handle this part of this job. I'm not sure if she's going to be able to do this. I want to know that, because at the end of the day, when you're looking at your candidates, that's what's going to make you select him or her over me or me over them. So I want to know, is there something I have not settled for you? Do you have a concern about a qualification that I may or may not have that I have not resolved? So that's how I like to finish it, because it gives them the platform to ask me another question or to pose something else. And it gives me the opportunity to get ahead of it. So that's how I like to close interviews. I will say also, you definitely want to follow up and you want to be persistent. And this is me as a recruiter. Oh man, we're so busy. I can't even tell you the day that I've had. We are, and Dan's on here, Dan can tell you, we are busy, busy, busy. But we know what it's like to want that job because we've been in your shoes. And trust me, you want to be persistent. You want to be persistent. You want to make sure that they're thinking of you, that they see your desire. So this isn't something I would shy away from. If you want it, you got to go get it. Okay. So I will finish with this piece because we're literally right on time. You are always, always, always being interviewed, always being interviewed. Before you even apply for a job, I had a case where there was this person that we had at a meeting. We met with him at a meeting and it was a very random thing, but my colleague and I walked away and we're like, hey, that guy would be great for this recruiter position we have open. And then we followed up with him. He had no idea he's interviewing. He's just being himself, doing his job, but he was noticed, and you're always being interviewed. When you call up and you talk to the secretary, you're being interviewed. When you submit that resume, when you do a follow-up, when you're in the lobby waiting for them to call you in to go get interviewed, or in the lobby on Skype waiting for everybody to come in, you're always, always being interviewed. And even when you get the job, you're still being interviewed for the next one. So just keep that in mind. You always want to mind your P's and Q's because it's always in the process. So with that, very, very, very excited for us to turn the floor to you. We want to know, what are your questions? What are your concerns? What do you want to know? How can we help guide this conversation and see your applications in our job feed? So with that, let me turn it around, and you have Courtney, Mark, myself, and my awesome colleague, Dan Matthews, here to help answer your questions.
And if y'all in the room have a question, feel free to just talk loud. The microphones are right here, so.
Yes, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Okay, with the interview process, when it asks us to give examples of what we've done with good judgment and logic to solve a problem, do we need to ask questions about what we've done with our internships or labs, or can it be anything?
I'll jump in on this one. I've done a lot of interviews recently. I always tell everyone, pull from any experience you have that makes sense. So it doesn't have to be school. I know a lot of people who are in school and trying to get their first job feel like every example has to come from school. It doesn't. If you worked your way through school, you can use examples from your work experience, a personal experience you may have, or school. Obviously, school is really easy when you're applying for an engineering position because you've done a lot of really relevant projects, but do not just stick to one thing and go through the whole interview answering questions only about school. I like when people mix it up. I want to hear about different aspects of their life rather than just what they've done there in class.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
You're welcome.
this, I'll jump in from there too. So those, they are behavioral based questions for a reason. You know, whenever we ask those questions, we know your qualifications, we've seen your resume. What we're really looking for is your behavior and how you react in not only the situation that we're presenting you, but in the stressful situation that is the interview process. Obviously what we do is stressful and important work. And so we want to see how you react to the situation that we give you and then react to answering that question. So yeah, pulling from personal life, pulling from how you interact with brothers, sisters, friends, pulling from, like Courtney said, work experience, even, you know, waitressing or, you know, if you work in retail, whatever the case may be, all of those are relevant behavioral reactions to that situation.
Perfect, thank you.
Can you tell us a bit more about the fire course that you're going to be starting up soon?
Did y'all hear that question?
Yes, so fire protection engineering is part of facility engineering, which is where I work. The fire protection engineers are usually that. They have graduated from a school that offers a fire protection engineering course. It's similar to what you would do if you were doing, oh, I can't think of the word, but it's different than an engineering degree or a mechanical engineering degree. So I think what WT is aiming to do is add a few relevant fire protection courses in along with your mechanical degree that would give you a jump start in being a part of this group. As long as you have the knowledge of the fire systems and how they work, you would fit in really well. They actually hire mechanical engineers into that group as well to take care of our high pressure fire loop system. So I think it's just a really neat way for a school closer to home to build up some engineers and us follow the program, have input on the coursework, and then hopefully get them hired on and to help us with the job that we have to do out there, which is really big. I don't know if any of y'all know much about Pantex. I know we've talked a little bit about it, but it's a huge site. There's over 600 buildings. All of the buildings or most of the buildings require fire protection. And so we have wet pipe systems, dry pipe systems, the HPFL, and then there's a program side where they're checking sprinklers, sprinkler heads and ensuring that everything's operating correctly. And then the other side where they're just maintaining the equipment. So I think this is a neat way for WT to step in and help us where we hurt. And that is, you know, getting people to come from colleges far away to work at Pantex in fire protection engineering.
How important is a real world experience in a relative field on your resume?
Did y'all hear that question okay?
I heard it. I think real world experience is important if you can get it. I know that there's a lot of internships to go around, but not everyone has one. I was lucky enough to do my internship with Pantex before I was hired, but me as a manager, I'm totally understanding. I realize that getting your degree is a big job in itself. Some of you may be supporting families along the way, and an internship just wasn't in your cards. If you can get one, I would. It gives you so much more experience to talk about. It's more relatable. Most of the managers at Pantex, like myself, are very technical. They're engineers themselves, and they have served in that role, so you'll resonate a little better. But do not be afraid if you don't have an internship in interviewing with us or anyone else. I think, again, as long as you come prepared to an interview and you have experiences that you can talk about, that is okay. Again, it makes it easier if you have worked a job in a similar field.
Coming from the recruiter perspective on that, you know, we understand that you're still in college. You more than likely may not have the relevant experience. That's why we hire at all different levels. We hire individuals that are straight out of college. We also look at requisitions for individuals who have 2 to 4 years experience. And then we have our, the seasoned, the experts of the career fields, if you will, that we look for as well. So we hire at all different levels. So just knowing that you don't have maybe the necessary experience that somebody seasoned would doesn't mean that you're not relevant or that we won't hire you. We may just hire you in at a beginner level and then, build you up and grow you into the expert level. So it is relevant, but it's not a deal breaker.
Matt, do you have a question?
Yeah. So I was wondering, do y'all have any knowledge on the software engineering development at Pantex? Like on the hiring process, do they hire more off of language experience or just like software development life cycle methodologies? And are they tied into like the projects engineering or like the research and development?
I'm going to jump in and answer real quick. I know on the design side, I'm not aware of any software engineers that work in the group. Cybersecurity is a big area where I know they have taken software engineers before. And then also some of the groups like configuration management, that is kind of within the engineering umbrella, although not an engineering position, but they do have software developers over there who are developing the databases and the systems that we use to access every day to handle our reporting, maintain all of our drawings, and access documentation that we need. But it's very specific to that group. And I know of one. I'm not sure of any more. I don't know if anyone else wants to jump in on that.
I would say from a recruiter perspective, I wouldn't limit yourself. So when you're applying, and I would maybe apply to more than one position. If you meet the minimum qualifications, I would put myself out there. We as recruiters, we will source applicants, and maybe you applied to this right here, but this one over here could really use you, and you have the background for that. We might funnel you around, but it's always helpful if you've already put yourself in that position. I would advise you not to apply for positions that you're not qualified for, because we can't move forward with an unqualified candidate. But if you meet the qualifications, I would definitely put my name in more than one basket, and then really push for it that way.
Does anybody else have any questions? Oh, we've got one in here.
Can I jump in on the question on the chat from Andrew real quick before we move on? So Andrew asked a question. I'm going to read it to y'all real quick. It says, how important is it to have your FE exam passed? Is there any accreditation advised to have? Pantex is unique in the fact that we do not have or require a lot of engineers to get their PE. However, you passing your FE exam is a big deal. When I look at resumes and I see that someone has passed their FE, I think that's a very big deal. When I was going to school, it wasn't required that you did it during school. And I really wish I would have. Once you get out in the real world, it's much harder to balance working full time and passing in that exam. But I do know it takes a considerable amount of studying and a lot of hard work and retention of knowledge to pass. So I think it's one of those things that looks really good, but it is not necessary. Also, on the other end, if you do have your FE, that's great. We'll probably pay for you to go out and get your PE when you're ready. Similar, if you come in without your FE and you decide from the beginning that you want to go out and get your FE, that is something Pantex is willing to pay for. So the tooling group that Mark was discussing earlier, a lot of them have their PE. They do not stamp any of their designs because ultimately MPO is our overarching place that takes care of everything we do. They're the ones who authorize the work that we do. So basically they take the liability on. But there are several PEs spread out amongst the groups that would be able to observe work you are doing if you have your FE or if you plan to get your FE after starting your job, who could vouch for you and say that the engineering work you are doing is good enough to be considered for a PE.
And then we'll just do that one question.
Awesome. I was gonna ask, what's the retention of interns like? And once in the company, what is the progression of moving up or around the company like?
Ooh, very good question. So I'm the coordinator for the internship program at Pantex, and we do a pretty good job. I can't give you the number off the top of my head because I wasn't clearly expecting that question, but I love it. I think there was maybe only 3 interns at Pantex that we didn't extend an offer to or an extend to return. And that was because, they had made a decision that they wanted to pursue grad school or et cetera, and they weren't ready for that step. But we do a very, very good job at making sure that if you come in and you do good work and you get a good recommendation or evaluation from your hiring manager, that we're looking for a home for you, whether it's in that department or in a different org. So we definitely follow through, making sure that we're connecting that next piece for our interns, that we're bringing them back if they're juniors and we want to bring them back in their senior year, or that we're extending offers to them if they are at the point where they're ready for that career shift. Now, in regards to your other question as it pertains to job progression in the company, we are very, very serious at making sure that we are helping our employees grow. So if you want to advance, if you want more challenges, if you want more opportunities, we are all for that. And to what Courtney was talking about, we put our money where our mouth is. If you want to go back and pursue another degree that's going to help you grow in the company, we want to help you with that. And we provide $8,000 of education assistance to reimburse your education for that year, because we want to grow you. So there's definitely a lot of different opportunities to do that. And, especially in engineering, because everybody wants our engineers. And I'm sure Courtney and Mark understand that, like they have a tough job because they bring in this talent, they build them up, and then, our other orgs are like, oh, well, let's bring you here, let's build you here. So there's definitely a lot of opportunities for upward mobility. And we definitely want, for those high performing interns, we want you to come back and work for us full time.
Awesome, thank you.
So for those in the room and those on Zoom, my name is Megan Ward. I work for the Career and Professional Development. We also had a few people on the Zoom, and we've got Beth and Carl here as well from our office. And we were listening so that we could learn what Pantex wants from their applications as well, so that we can help you as you apply for those positions. So if you're writing your resume and you're ready to submit that to Pantex, please come talk to us so we can also be your proofreaders and your reviewers for you as well. And we are located in the Classroom Center, Suite 113.
Megan, do y'all still do mock interviews for students?
We do, and we would love to have any of you guys as those folks. So we can certainly talk about that.
I would highly encourage it. A behavioral interview is very different. As engineers, we get very much in the technical mindset, and to be able to pull off a behavioral interview is sometimes challenging. So please take advantage. You can tell when someone is well prepared. You can tell if someone has anticipated the questions. You can see them flipping through examples in their mind, and there is not enough to be said about mock interviews. I know they weren't really utilized very much when I was there, but it is a big deal. They're going to give you constructive feedback that is very much needed. So please sign up for what they're offering.
And like Courtney mentioned, our mock interviews are actually based on behavioral questions. So it's literally practice for the first round of interviews that Pantex mentioned. So absolutely come see us. You can register for those on Handshake. The next one I think that's open is November 15th. And then we've got a December 1st one if you want to start practicing that now. You do have to get a resume review before you go into mock interviews. So schedule that too with our office.
There's one point I'd like to make, Megan, if we still have some folks in the room for clarification. I made a comment earlier to highlight your experience based on what is more relevant for that position. I do not want that to be interpreted as the work that you have done might not, isn't as important. Like I made a comment, like I waitressed for years. Now, when I'm applying for a position in recruitment, maybe that's not what the first thing I would highlight pieces that I know is relevant to that. But that doesn't go without saying that it's an extremely challenging job, that you have to be able to multitask, that you have to work under a very stressful environment, that you have to be able to de-escalate issues, that you have to be able to smile and stay professional even when somebody's insulting you, right? So there's a lot of very important skills that you develop in this position and in other positions like it. But if I want to give you a how pop, pop, pop and get your attention, I'm going to start with what I know you want to see first and what's going to make you look at me first, and then work in my other experience in a way that highlights the way that I develop skills that would be of value to you. So I just wanted to be clear about that.
Absolutely. Yeah, so like I said, if you need any assistance with your resume, please holler at us. And this session was recorded. It'll be posted to WT Careers YouTube page probably in the next week or so. So if you need to reference anything again. And for those in the room, y'all have handouts of where you can actually apply for those jobs as well, hopefully. I know some people came in late and I ran out, but so if you need that information, come find me.
Megan, thank you so much for helping host this. We very much appreciate you. We hope it's one of many. And to Courtney, Mark, and Dan, thank you all so much for being a part of this. And we definitely look forward to these applicants. And as Dan mentioned, our sister partner at Y12, they're definitely hiring. So if you're looking at relocating to the beautiful Tennessee, that's another option for you too.